Other questions?
David Ivers with the Arkansas Residential Assisted Living Association. I think just to follow up on that, Andy, it would be very hard for us to have a confidence in an assessment that wasn't the same instrument, or at least the same initial instrument in all settings.
And that's the intent. So the intent is that there be consistency in the instrument. And, I'm still learning the correspondence, but there is a direct overlap in the content of the universal assessment and the MDS. The MDS is much richer and only comes after someone is in the institution. So really the challenge is assuring consistency between the MDS and a universal assessment that would be administered before entry into the nursing home. So that's got to be consistent. And then we have to figure out how to make consistent the universal assessment regardless of where that individual ends up, because let's not predict where they end up before they actually go through the process.
Right, and then on that same note, a lot of this discussion seems like it should have been addressed or should be addressed in the balancing incentives payment application to CMS, especially the single point of entry, no wrong door, which would be right on target with some of the very issue about how you get into each setting. And I guess I'm kind of wondering where that is, why we haven't heard anything about it, and how it got developed without provider participation on such complicated issues.
Did we answer that question in the BIP application? I mean, I don't think we did, and the reason is,
That's what we're saying, is we don't even know where it is in the process.
So the motive in getting the BIP application to the federal government sooner than later, and before having significant stakeholder input, is A, it's entirely vague. So you still have your input. Number two, apparently you don't have to be that specific to start getting money. So we're trying to get money quick. I mean, I'll just be as crass as I can be. The timing of that is to get matching dollars sooner, and we're betting that they give us those matching dollars while we're still actually defining the product.
Okay. And then the final thing is, where are we on health homes for this episode or population?
And we're still we literally are at the drawing board stage for health home. And, I invite whenever I meet individually with you all, or, offline or whatever, suggestions, because we do not have a mature recommendation to even float at this point. I mean, we're thinking about it. It's not like I couldn't speculate, but we're not ready to. It's very early, that process. Jim Lee, come right back to you. If I could pause and make sure that in our satellites, just with 5 minutes left, that we get any questions from, Fayetteville, Jonesboro, Fort Smith, the other places there, Texarkana, Mountain Home. Any questions from our satellite locations? Good. Thank you all for participating. We'll take questions for another few minutes here formally, and then I will stick around, of course. Jim.
I know time is limited, and I'll be as quick as I can. On page 1, I want to go back. You ask us to get on the analysis, what have we missed and what additional analysis would you like to see? Sort of a process question, and it's consensus of some of our providers that we've talked to, and some other policy makers. And first of all, we were glad to see you temper some of the remarks about the growth of our program and the history of that. And we were glad to see that or hear that from you today, and we applaud that. And there's always a but after that. The document itself.
That's a fair point.
The document itself doesn't explain any of that. If I were to get online and I were a legislator who appropriates our funds, who answers to the folks, the taxpayers out in the country who put their mom in the nursing home or in the Elder Choice Program, it would appear to me, by looking at this document, that it's a bad thing that we're giving high quality care to our nursing facilities, and that we've grown our rates, and that we've increased our staffing 40 or 50% over the last 10 years, and that we have upgraded our physical plants and our buildings, and they're no longer Well, a large percentage of them before this methodology went into place were 3 and 4 ward rooms with cinder block buildings, and a few are still. But we've done a lot to improve that. And I guess I was glad to see you temper the document with your remarks here publicly, but we'd like to see a little more explanation when this goes online about some of the history of why we're here today and how we got here. And I guess the other thing is, and we mentioned this at the last one, nowhere in any of the financial data does it actually show or break down what these costs are to the state itself in general revenue dollars and other. And I think that it's absolutely important for folks to know not just the total spend, but what is Arkansas's share, and what are the federal match rates that come along with those for any program. And we know we don't have a crystal ball. Obviously, that can change at any time. But those are our suggestions, and I appreciate that.
Fair point. I'm vexed as to whether we want to change an historical document. However, maybe we can handle it this way this time. We'll just consider what you just asked, a question that we will include in our Q&A online, which is how. Let me see if I can help you, Jim. So. How did the policy changes, what was the purpose of the policy changes earlier in the decade? What was their impact? When did they occur? And how do they help explain the growth in cost? And then remind me your second question.
To the state of Arkansas.
Oh, right, yes. So, right. We expect to receive in the quality assurance fee about $83 million from nursing homes, which will then count against their cost as we increase the reimbursement, and so there's reimbursement for that, and it's about 83. And oh, I see. So we removed that from our data. We're focusing on just the payments that we make. We'd probably have to add that back into both the numerator and the denominator, I guess, is what you're asking.
You do it both ways.
Right.
It's important for us.
Right. My back of the envelope is that the state share is, over $100 million. The nursing assessment is, over 80, a little over 80 million in this next fiscal year, and that the total spend for private nursing facilities is in the $640 million range probably for that year. So be glad to invite input. I know we're going to answer that for the legislature as well. So again, a little over, I don't know if it's 60-40, but 55-45, something like that. Other questions, comments? Again, we're intending to provoke a conversation about quality, so please, as homework, and for next time and in between, think about those quality metrics and outcomes, additional data that you'd like to see. Appreciate the comments as we went along. And please pay attention to our website. I would close with this. The payment improvement effort, which this is a part of, the time frame that we outlined for you at the end of the presentation, that the assumption of achieving those policy improvements, payment improvements, procedural changes, et cetera, are now built in to the agency's projection of cost in the Medicaid program. So we're assuming that these things happen in our projection of cost. And we're no longer asking the legislature for the funding that we will save as a result. And just want to be as direct as I can. We're assuming that these things happen, even though in some cases we don't know exactly what those reforms will be. That's just to reveal to you the pressure that we are all under as a state to make this program sustainable, so that we can protect it and so that it serves those in need.